fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football.
Hey Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers, talking about the Seahawks victory against the Jets at home in week 17. And they beat them handily, Keith. There just wasn't even any question in this game, 23-6. It could have been 33-6. The Jets weren't scoring any points. Seattle's defense played outstanding, I thought, in this game. Seattle's offense and rushing attack did enough. And that was it.
Yeah. The defense played great. I mean, we knew the Jets were not a great offense, right? And, we kind of knew that going in. This was a game that if they moved the ball really easily on Seattle's defense, then that was going to be bad things for Seattle's defense. But no, the defense did what it was supposed to do. Shut them down, stopped them from being able to do anything offensively. And, it's just a good outing for him.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's talk about how they won, and we can talk about playoff implications and all that stuff afterwards. But there were certain players that really stood out in this game to me. Most of them on defense. Darrell Taylor had a great game, probably one of his best games, 2.5 sacks, including a strip sack, giving him 8.5 sacks on the season. Quentin Jefferson, his partner in crime there on the line, had 1.5 sacks. He's got 5.5 on the season. Solid coverage on the back end by Tariq Woolen and Michael Jackson, including a pick from Jackson, fumbled right at the end, but Woolen was there to pick that up. Quandre Diggs had his 3rd interception of the season. Cody Barton, I thought, played a really solid game. All that on defense. Ken Walker on offense started out with that 60-yard explosive run, which I thought was one of the best runs of the season for sure. Ended up with 133 yards on 23 carries on the day. DJ Dallas had a great day, both receiving and running. Probably his best day as a pro. Kobe Parkinson came up big with 5 catches and a touchdown. Geno Smith played well, given the fact that the receivers didn't do anything in this game. I thought Geno played actually a strategically really good game because he had to go away from those guys a lot because Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed on the other side were really sticking to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Yeah. And so our tight ends played a significant role in catching out of the backfield as well.
Agreed. I mean, everyone, there's a lot of contributions here that worked really well. I liked what I saw from Stone Forsythe at right tackle. I mean, granted, they gave him help. They gave him Tyler Mabry a lot right beside him, but
he wasn't a problem.
But he wasn't a problem. He wasn't a turnstile. And for a backup tackle to not be bad is something that we haven't seen in a long time from Seattle.
Yeah, I think he allowed a sack where their defender had a good jump on that play, and but most of the time he was pretty solid in there and opened up some great running lanes as well. I thought overall the offensive line played well as a unit, just getting a little bit of a push, and they haven't done that in 4 out of the last 5 games. And so that was nice to see, especially against a Jets defense that's actually pretty sound and came in ranked number 4 in the NFL against the run. And you wouldn't have known it by looking at this game.
Well, yes and no. I mean, that big run from Ken Walker kind of skews everyone's opinion, but you look at the rest of the game, 22 runs for 73 yards. And, that's less than 4 yards a carry. So they actually did a pretty good job in this game of making things hard for Seattle. And it didn't matter. I mean, the Geno did enough. The tight ends did enough. The DJ Dallas came in. It was a nice change of pace. There was a, backyard football crazy flip play that went for huge yards for Dallas, which was fun. And the Jets weren't going to score. because the defense was playing too well. So the offense also didn't have that. We have to score. We have to score. We got to keep up. There was none of that. They could sit back and do what they wanted to do. And if they didn't get a first down, they could punt and be okay with it.
Yeah, I think you nailed it as far as the key of the game. I mean, it really kind of points to the defense, basically doing what they were expected to do. And then, kicking them off the field. I think New York ended up being 4 of 13 on third down conversions. To me, that's the key of the game, plus a couple turnovers. And you got to hand it to the defense. I think this game, the offense did what they needed to do. Ken Walker had a great game, but the defense was just stout, allowing 6 points. I think they had 270 yards total offense. Mike White, it's hard to imagine benching Zach Wilson, giving up on that draft pick for this guy. I didn't see what anyone else is seeing out there. He didn't scare me. He didn't show enough. He made a lot of mistakes. He looked skittish in the pocket. Seattle was able to pressure them.
Very inaccurate throwing the ball.
Yeah. And so, it was just one of those things. We took care of business. The interesting thing for me, well, a couple things. Jordan Brooks, it looks like he's gone for the year and possibly impact next year if his knee is bad enough. At least an ACL on that thing. It's a non-contact injury, kind of came down weird, came down hard and at an angle and kind of twisted that thing. And so it looked like maybe an MCL ACL combo, but that's just speculation. They are looking into it, running tests this morning. We don't have any further information right now as of recording. So,
well, it wasn't your typical non-contact where you're looking, well, that's obviously an ACL. I mean, he was making a tackle. It just came down weird angle. And,
right. But nobody ran into him. He just came down on it.
Yeah, weird. But he was making a tackle. He was getting pushed over. So I wouldn't call it a non-contact injury, but yeah, he looks like he's probably done for the year. Hopefully it's not bad. It's like something like, an MCL that heals itself, doesn't need surgery, and he'll be back, in time for next year. We'll see. That's the goal there, or the hope. But we will have to wait and see on that. Luckily, Cody Barton came in, stepped up, played well. Tyler Mabry came in off the bench, a guy that showed well in the preseason. I thought had made the 53, but didn't.
You mean Tanner Muse?
Yeah, Tyler Mabry's on the tight end on the offense. Tanner Muse, a guy that I thought had made the roster out of camp and out of the preseason, but didn't. But has come in a couple times for Seattle and played pretty well. And I thought he showed well in that role. And I was actually impressed with Cody Barton moving over to the Mike spot where he's now in control of the defense and making the line calls and that kind of stuff. And he did well. Like the as far as that goes, the defense didn't miss a beat.
Correct. Yeah, but it's still nonetheless a step down. Seattle's missing a lot of players. You saw that in this game. A lot of snaps being taken by some young guys, which is great this time of the year. Again, playoffs are going to be interesting. We can talk about the scenarios, what we need to do to get in, but it seems unlikely that we would do anything, but you never know. This team catches a little fire, plays this well against solid teams down the stretch, and we could do something. But, if we get into the 7th seed, Seattle's going to face, at a minimum, the 49ers first game, and we'll see how that goes. Playoff talk. So Seattle must win next week against the Rams. That's a given. And then they also need the Detroit Lions, coached by I can't even believe I'm saying this, coached by Dan Campbell, to beat Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers to get the 7th seed. So if the Packers win, we're out no matter what we do. Packers lose, we win, we're in. That's it.
Yep. If the Pack wins, they're in as the 7th seed. If they lose and Seattle wins, then Seattle gets it. And if they lose and Seattle loses, then Detroit actually makes the playoffs.
Yeah. And you know what? Detroit is crazy as far as their record. So they're probably one of the 4 best teams in the NFC right now. They're 7-2 after a 1-6 start since week 9. They're playing really well. They beat the crap out of the Bears. Did what they needed to do, but their defense looked dominant in that game. And their offense, scores a ton of points. Their defense is really kind of coming on, which is the reason why they're winning now. Before, their defense couldn't stop anybody. Their offense was scoring points. Now the offense is scoring and the defense has kind of stepped up. And so they're 7-2. They're heading to Green Bay next week, which is the unfortunate part of this equation. They need to do it at Lambeau Field. But they're also facing a team against the Green Bay Packers that's won 4 in a row. Aaron Rodgers is tough to beat in the playoffs. But nonetheless, they're 8-8 as well. We'll see how that goes. I think Seattle just needs to play its game. I like the way Seattle's playing to finish the year. I think the defense has played well in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Just haven't been able to get the win facing the 49ers and the Chiefs. They did it against the Jets. They need to take care of business against the Rams. I like the way that they're finishing the season, even if they don't make the playoffs. I think that hats off to the team for kind of sticking in there and finishing strong.
Yeah. It's an interesting situation because you're like, okay, at this point, it's fun to still be in it. And we didn't expect this team to be in it. We figured that we'd be full into draft talk a month ago.
Right.
When the season started. And Seahawks got off to a weird start, and then they had won this 4 in a row, got themselves up to 6-3. And we're like, all right, maybe this team's far better than we thought. And then they've stumbled for a while. And, everything dropped and they were 7-8. But now they're 8-8 and they got a chance. And I like their chances actually, because I think that, the Rams just aren't a good football team right now. And
we're early 8.5 point favorites in this game.
Wow.
And the Rams are missing their, Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp and Stafford at quarterback. And so we're playing a diminished roster. We did last time as well. It doesn't matter in the NFL. This is the last game. The playoffs are on the line, which is great. Yeah, who would have expected that of the Seahawks roster?
I know.
In September, we're relevant up to the very last game of the season, and there's a lot riding on this game. I mean, for the team, for Pete Carroll, for the team, Geno Smith, for all the young players to get that experience. Love to see that. On the other end of the spectrum, Denver lost its game. So we're guaranteed a top 5 pick in the NFL draft, no matter what Seattle does. So we might as well go win. That second first round draft pick is still going to be valuable, even if it's in the low 20s. It's just the best case scenario for me. Playing good football in December, being in the playoff race, having a top end draft pick. So you've kept the integrity of your team. You haven't lost your team to a really bad year. Your coach is doing well. Everything's kind of coming together on the defensive side. They've had their struggles, but we've been able to identify what we need to be a competitive going into next year. So that's really helped identify areas of need. And, in the offseason, we've got a chunk of cash to spend in free agency, got all those draft picks, 8 draft picks, 4 in the top 40. Wow.
Yep. The other thing is the Seahawks still have a shot at the number 2 overall pick. They need Chicago to win a game, which they haven't done a lot of this year. They're 3-13. Most likely, and you look at it, Denver has the quote unquote tiebreaker over Arizona now for the 3rd seed. And so, and same with Indy's got the tie. Yeah, the 3rd pick. And so it's just a matter of if Denver loses again, the worst they'll have is the 3rd pick. If they win, the best that they can have for them would be the 5th pick. So that's the best record that they can.
And there is a scenario where a couple other teams have to lose. They could win, but still end up with a 4th pick. So most likely it's either the 3rd or the 5th pick. It looks like it's going to be the 3rd. They're facing the Chargers Chargers are a playoff team. They've already lost to the Chargers this year. So as long as the Chargers take care of business, Denver should lose that game, finish with 4 wins, and we've got a top 3 pick. I mean, that's just crazy. What a fortunate thing to happen. You take a look at that trade and the trade value, and this will be analyzed for years to come. But this thing isn't over yet. We still have 2 picks. The second round pick is also going to be high, top, 35 pick. Holy cow. I mean, what a great opportunity for John Schneider and company to improve this roster with some blue chip talent and starter level talent going into next season. It's unreal.
Yeah. I mean, this was supposed to be a rebuild year, right? You trade away your franchise quarterback, you load up on a bunch of draft picks. You also trade away the best linebacker in franchise history, one of the best to ever play the game. Or I guess you didn't trade him. You released him because of his contract. But this is supposed to be the rebuild year, and they're 8-8, and they're going into week 17 with a chance to make the playoffs. It's been a great year for Seattle. I mean, they've done
won more games than last year.
Yeah, they're a better team than they were last year, and that's hard to believe given what talent left.
Yeah. Yeah, they changed their entire defensive scheme, brought in some players, had a great draft. I mean,
lost their best cornerback too.
Yeah, Geno Smith had a career year, and fantastic for him. Geno's achieved just tremendous amount of incentive raises just in this season as well. He started out with like a $3.5 million base with another $3.5 million in incentives. He's only not going to hit just a couple $100,000 of those extra incentives. He's going to make $2.5 million extra dollars just by throwing for 4,000 yards, getting to 30 touchdowns, making the Pro Bowl, making the playoffs. All those were attached to his contract as far as being able to reach a certain level of pay, and he's hit all of them. I mean, the only thing he hasn't hit is 10 wins. I think that was in his contract. He's not going to be able to hit that, but everything else, he's played his butt off and earned that. And hats off to Geno Smith.
Oh yeah, he's been like the feel good story of the NFL all year. I mean, just straight up. I mean, he's pretty much a shoe-in for comeback player of the year and that kind of stuff, because he's more than just written off. Like, he was a joke, right? He was a guy that was thought of as a joke, especially in New York and the team that drafted him and their fan base. Like, he was this big mistake and this big problem. And is he still in the league? Wow, that's crazy.
He came back and beat the 3 teams that had previously employed him this year.
Yeah.
He beat each one of them.
Beat all 3 of them. Yep. And did so looking good in all of them. And, looked good in this game. Yeah. The stats aren't like fantastic, but
it's games
some of that's game flow.
It's games like this, Keith, that where everything isn't perfect and his wide receivers can't get open and stuff, and he still gets the job done. It's games like this that give me confidence, and I think that gives the franchise confidence going into next season to be able to re-sign him for a reasonable amount. The fortunate thing, I think, for Seattle is this is a guy that can take you to the playoffs, maybe not win a Super Bowl, but he's good enough with this current roster to bring back at a reasonable amount. And I'm going to just say $20 million next year on a 1-year deal, or maybe a 2-year deal. Kind of a, let's prove, 2022 wasn't a fluke. Let's go do 2023 as well, and give him an opportunity to earn some real money and see if we can improve the roster around him even more and see if he can get further. And I just can't say enough good things about him, as far as exceeding expectations. He's not perfect, but for this roster and for the Seahawks to be able to have flexibility heading into the draft and free agency, he's been spectacular.
Oh, absolutely. Agree. And he's a big part of Seattle's success this year. I mean, that needs to, like, it's kind of obvious, but it does need to be said, because even like you and I kept talking about, should they be playing Drew Lock? like in the preseason, because Geno didn't look very good in
Yeah,
the
we were kind of
preseason
upset
either.
that Drew didn't have a chance because he had COVID right in the
Mhm.
wrong time to be able to prove himself. Then he came out in the third game and had a really bad game, and well, that was that.
Yeah.
But for a while there, we were like, they look like they're giving this thing to Geno because they really haven't given Drew an opportunity in camp to run with the number ones and so forth. It turns out Pete knew what he was doing. He sees those guys in the building every single day, knows what a pro he is. He believed him. Not only that, but he saw him the previous 2 years behind Russell Wilson, or 3 years. And so it is what it is. And Drew, Drew seems like a really hot and cold kind of player. Even if he would have come in, I think that he would have had spectacular moments, and then he would have had just really defeating 3 interception games, and we would have been questioning everything. So I think it worked out pretty well. I still, you take a look at if that draft pick is number 3 overall, we're going to have some options. We're either going to have one of Anderson or Carter sitting there. We're going to have one of CJ Stroud or Will Levis sitting there. And the Seahawks are going to have to make a decision. Do they take a quarterback? Is it Stroud? Is it Levis? Is it Anderson or Carter? One of those guys that I've mentioned is going to sit there. And I'm fascinated. I'm just completely fascinated by what needs to happen in this offseason to get to a decision on that day, because holy cow, it couldn't be bigger.
You know who's the real winner in all of this draft stuff? Chicago, because they're terrible, but they've got a quarterback. And so they're gonna have Indy and Atlanta, which are currently at 5 and 7, trying, and maybe even the Raiders at 8 with the whatever they're doing there. Those 3 teams trying to trade up to number 2 to get ahead of Seattle.
Possibly the Jets. I mean, Jets need to handle something too.
Yeah, but the Jets are so far down. They're at 13. Like, what are they going to have to give up to go up and get that, right? So it's easier for Indy, at 5 to jump up to 2. And but Chicago's gonna get a ton of draft capital in return by moving down a few spots. They don't need a quarterback. They can give up, let's say it's CJ Stroud. They can give them to Indy, get a good defensive player, which they desperately need, and a whole bunch of other draft picks. They're really the winners in all of this.
That's a great point. Yeah, so much. It's fascinating to me. I mean, this draft is going to be epic as far as what kind of value that the Seahawks have to play around, move around, pick, not pick, trade. We've got that second pick in the first round. We've got a high second and our own second as well. And that's a lot of ammunition to move around. When we used to pick in the late 20s consistently, and we always knew that we were going to move back, and we still got value and so forth. This is like 10 times that scenario. If that third pick overall, if it is a third, is extremely valuable. I mean, you take a look at the draft value points that represents. I mean, you only have to trade back like 5 or 6 picks, and that's worth a first round pick, an additional first round pick, like in 2024, or 2 seconds, or a second and a third in this draft that are high picks. I mean, it's a lot. And so the Seahawks are going to have a huge amount of options. And I know fans might be upset that, well, we're sitting at third and then you drop down and maybe you drop down again. But I think everyone needs to understand that there's more than 2 or 3 holes on this team that need to get fixed as well. And having a boatload of picks, high level picks, would also be very enticing.
Yeah. I mean, they've already got a boat level of high level picks. So
yes, they do. But having 2 or 3 more in addition to maybe a 2024 first or something like that would be awfully tempting. For this franchise,
it's going to depend on what teams offer too, because if Arizona before the draft recommits, basically says they're not doing anything, even though they're at 4 at quarterback because they signed Tyler Murray to such a huge contract that they can't get out of. Okay, well then, if Indy doesn't jump up to 2 in front of Seattle, you've got Houston's going to take a quarterback, but Seattle might. Indy then becomes the next team that wants one, down at 5. And so a team that wants to move up, like say the Jets, wants to move up in front of Indy to get that draft pick so they can get their quarterback. I mean, San Francisco had to give up three number ones to get Trey Lance, and moving about the same distance. If they move from 13 up to 3 and give Seattle 3 first-round picks, that's, that helps make the franchise, not just good, but competitive and a contender for years to come. For years.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it'll be really interesting because no single player is going to solve this, even if it's a quarterback. I mean, a rookie quarterback coming in 2023 would probably not play, especially if they re-sign Geno. And yeah, anyway, we can have all those conversations. We will about the offseason for sure. So what's going to happen? The interesting thing I thought about in this game was Pete Carroll. There's been some rumors out there. Benjamin Albright and some others have written from they perceive credible information that Pete Carroll has been considering retirement this year. And it's games like this that are on the line late December, January, where playoffs are still on the line, and you go out and win a game like this, maybe win next week, I think ensures the fact that Pete Carroll comes back.
Yeah, I agree. I would have a hard time seeing him step down unless it's a situation where, he was like, hey, I thought about, stepping down a year ago, but
I wanted to make sure that the franchise was on the right track again.
Yeah, I didn't want to leave this team, hurting. I wanted to do what we had to do to get this team back competitive again, and now we are. And then he steps back, but I also don't see him completely stepping all the way back. Like, I know I brought this up a couple times, but he's both president and coach. And I could see him stepping back into his president role where he has an opportunity to help pick his successor and
still be involved in the draft and
still do things, still right. Have a say in things, but not have to go through the day-to-day grind. I could see him do that. But honestly,
I think he likes the day-to-day grind is the thing.
If you go look at him on Sunday this week, he did not look like a guy who was ready to retire. He was running up and down that sideline. He was barking at officials constantly throughout the game because he didn't like calls and they weren't giving him the DPIs that he thought his receivers had earned. And he was just, there was so much energy. You could see his passion for the game was there. You don't walk away when you still care that much. Not if you're winning. And the Seahawks are winning. So, yeah.
Interesting. Wow. All right. I'm going to ask you for a quick prediction. What happens in this Detroit Green Bay game, Keith? Man. Detroit's won 7 of the last 9. They go in, they wiped out Chicago. Now, I know Chicago is a bad team, but they made them look like a high school team. Their defense was dominant. Their offense was efficient. Jared Goff looks like he's almost unrecognizable. The way that he's running the team. Had 3 touchdowns in this game. What do you think?
Dan Campbell has really done a lot to help Jared Goff be successful because they're not asking him to be Aaron Rodgers. They're asking him to be Jared Goff, and they scheme up so much easy for Goff. He doesn't have to do anything that's hard because everything that they ask of him to do is easy, and it works. I mean, it's one of the most prolific offenses in the NFL. And so he's done some great things, and it's not like Green Bay's defense isn't that good. And I think the Lions are going to score. The question is, can they slow down Green Bay's offense? Because Green Bay got off to a terrible start at the beginning of the year because they had no wide receivers, and they were waiting for these 2 rookies to finally mature
And
and
catch some passes. Yeah.
and actually catch the ball instead of
Right.
dropping wide open, touchdowns. And they've kind of done that. They've kind of stepped up into the roles that where they needed to. And so that offense has been pretty good too.
And the running attack is, with
As-
Adams
yeah.
back there is good.
Yeah, they've been great running the ball. It comes down to these are two offenses that can move the ball and score, two defenses that aren't that good and struggle, and terrible weather because you're in Green Bay in January. So honestly,
Do you know that the Lions have held teams under 20 points 5 out of the last 9 games?
yeah, but who have they played?
I don't care. It's hard to do in the NFL.
Okay.
I mean, their
I don't
offense, time of possession just really dominates games, and their
That's-
defense does enough.
Yeah, that has a lot to do with it, is that the time of possession, they dominate games. They make it really hard on opposing offenses that way.
They made it hard on us. I mean, that game that we played them was a terrific, entertaining game, but it was it was like a tooth and nail game as far as the defense is playing. It was truly awful.
There were no defenses playing in that game on either side.
True.
I mean, you had
Very
what,
true.
96 total points or whatever it was.
96 total, offensive play, or I think that there was 120 or some offensive plays in that game.
Yeah, and it was just points on every drive for both teams, and neither defense could do anything. Both defenses were
But since
terrible.
that game, the Lions have woken up. It's 7-2 in the last 9. I mean, to get into this position where they're 8-8 and have a chance, I mean, Lions fans just got to be thrilled. Now, whether they win or lose or whatever, I mean, they want to win. The other thing is, the ineptitude I want to talk about. The Lions are 1-11 in playoff games in the last 64 seasons. This is a team that hasn't won a playoff game in 30 years. It's the only postseason win since 1957 came in 1991 in a divisional round against the Dallas Cowboys. This team is the definition of ineptitude. And so to be in this position where Dan Campbell has led them to this position, I think it's just a testament to just how good of a coach he is and a motivator, and getting this team that's not necessarily ready or doesn't have all the talent in the world, but is working in that direction, is just, it's fantastic to me. Now, I want them to win. I don't want to get them into the playoffs or anything. I want Seattle to win as well. But, man, if they can help us out, beat the Green Bay Packers, and we can take care of business at home, they're going to be my second favorite franchise, I think.
Yeah, actually, I like the direction that franchise is taking. Dan Campbell was such a good hire. And I know there was a point at the season where people were like, has anyone gotten more like credit for not doing anything than Dan Campbell? Because he hasn't, he hasn't won a lot, and they were losing again this year, but now they're winning, and they've got them into the spot. So I think
this is a team in preseason we pegged it getting to 7 wins.
Yeah.
And having that be a stretch, and just saying, this team is on the rise, and they got to 8 and possibly, could get to 9, not just miss the playoffs. That'd be one of those 9-win teams looking on the outside looking in, but nonetheless fun.
Yeah. I mean, so in that game, like I said, it's two good offenses, two defenses that aren't as good as their offenses, and but terrible weather in Green Bay. And it's hard to figure out what's going to happen with this. I actually like Detroit's offense in the cold more than I like Green Bay's right now, because of the way that they scheme everything to be easy. There's no, there's so much like movement and quick reads for Goff and that kind of stuff that it just makes life easier, even if the weather's bad.
So I got good news for you.
Yeah.
Weather. Snows earlier in the week, Thursday, but Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday are cool, but not terrible, and partly sunny. So high 27, low of 20 on Saturday with partly sunny skies, 27 and 20 on Sunday as well. Identical, partly sunny. So It's weather is going to be a factor as far as cold, but that's it.
Yeah, it's going to be a good game. I mean, that's the end point. Is that I think it's going to be a really entertaining game. You've got a great quarterback surrounded by less talent on one side, and an average quarterback surrounded by more talent on the other side. And you'll see how it comes down. I wouldn't bet against Rodgers, not at this point. But I like Detroit's chances. I really do. I think it's going to be a good game.
Yeah. Plus, they've got both Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift in action now. DeAndre Swift was out when the Seahawks played them, so it's just another weapon. They've also got Jamison Williams, who really had an impact in this last game against the Bears, coming back from that ACL he suffered in the national championship game a year ago. So he's just now really starting to be an impact on that team. And their defense is really coming into its own. Aiden Hutchinson obviously is the player to watch there. He's got 4 tackles, half sack, and a fumble recovery and an interception in this game. He's got 4 interceptions on the year, which is crazy. Yeah, it'll be an interesting game. I think I'm hopeful anyway that Detroit's going to pull this thing out, obviously. So
it's weird that through the rookie years that the Kayvon Thibodeau versus Aiden Hutchinson debate ended up being yes for both of them. Both of them have been outstanding this year, and it really wasn't much of a debate. It's not like which one's going to be better. They've both been really good. The
first player taken overall, though, I can't remember his name right now. The guy from Georgia, super athletic freak, has just had a mediocre season. So who knows, right?
Which was weird because when leading into the draft stuff, I didn't think he was the number 1 overall pick. I thought it was either Hutchinson or Thibodeau,
and it should have been based on game film.
Yeah, and I thought that it was going to be one of those things where one of those two went, and the guy from Georgia dropped in, to 7 or something like that. But then in the week leading up to the draft, everyone was like, "Nope, he's the guy. He's just too athletic to, the measure."
Well, the combine, he knocked it out right in the combine. Ran like a 4.45 40 at 230 pounds or something like that, and that was the end.
Yeah, and so basically, I was like, "No, he's just too athletic," and I was like, I don't see it. Not that I expected him to fall out of the top 10, but I thought the other 2 guys were better, and they were more likely to pop quickly, and they were going to be better. And it ended up being exactly what that happened. I love the fact that all those guys are playing well at the guys at the top of the draft. It's just fun when you see first round picks go and do their thing. I hate seeing draft busts because that means there's a fan base out there that got sold something and then they hate it.
All right. So we're going to wrap this show up. We've got another show midweek here coming up. We'll find a topic and we'll explore that in depth. And then we'll preview the final game of the year at the end of the week between the Rams visiting the Seattle Seahawks. It's awesome to be relevant this time of the year. It's fun when you don't have to worry about draft picks. Sometimes you get into this situation and you're like, did we really want to win? I don't know. With that Denver pick there, it just really makes it so much more enjoyable to be 8-8 and still want to win and be competitive and not feel weird about it. So here we are. Anyway, that's it. So follow Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can follow me at NWC Hawk. The show is at Hawks Playbook. You can follow us on Twitter, or not Twitter, but you can follow us on our website, on our YouTube channel, and your favorite podcast platform. And just hit that subscribe button. 3 shows a week. So until next time, go Hawks.
Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWC Hawk. Keith is at Myers NFL. And the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.